8. Malabanan. After getting off the subway in Manhattan's Soho neighborhood in 2022, professional MMA fighter and coach Malabanan saw someone sucker punch an older man and a teenage boy in the street. The 44-year-old initially stood back and watched, but when witnesses told him that the guy had punched at least 6 other people, he tackled the criminal to the ground and held him until police arrived. Footage of the takedown went viral, and the quick-thinking athlete received endless praise for intervening before more people got hurt. The suspect, 28-year-old Samuel Frazier, was later charged with 2 counts of misdemeanor assault. Unfortunately, New York State's unusually generous bail laws allowed Frazier to get out of custody. After being booked and processed, he was sent on his way with instructions to come back to court at a later date. While violent crime is skyrocketing in New York City, Good Samaritans like Malabanan are playing a big role in maintaining public safety. In a self-recorded Instagram video, he encouraged other MMA fighters and coaches to use their skills to help when someone's in need. He also reminded those who are willing to step in to avoid escalating a dangerous situation and to only do what's necessary to stop the suspect until law enforcement arrives. After the incident, New York City Mayor Eric Adams voiced his frustrations with the state's bail laws and called for changes that would make it easier for judges to keep dangerous individuals behind bars. 7. Sophia Romo. Sophia Romo was about to head home from her adult entertainment shop in Houston one day in 2022 when an employee alerted her to a possible shoplifter. She watched surveillance footage and saw a woman stuffing items into her purse. The worker who pointed out the suspect said that he confronted the woman and she refused to give the merchandise back. Romo decided to hit the record button on her phone, follow the suspect onto a public transportation bus and confront her on camera. The woman agreed to pay for the stolen goods when the bus got to her home. In the meantime, Romo went through her purse and removed $600 worth of materials. She also found a device for removing security tags, suggesting that this wasn't the suspect's first time robbing a store. After leaving the bus, Romo kept pursuing the woman on foot and called 911. The video ended with officers handcuffing the thief, who was later identified as Candy Alacon. Romo later said that after posting the video, other local businesses reached out to her and said they also had issues with the suspect, who was on probation for a past theft conviction at the time of her arrest. In an update, Romo admitted that her decision to follow and confront Alacon was very dangerous. But she was compelled to do it because of the ongoing theft problem at her store and hoped that making an example out of one person would stop others from shoplifting in the future. 6. A quiet stranger. Rose Andreson and her husband Terrell were driving on a highway near Jacksonville, Florida in 2020 when Terrell suddenly went unconscious behind the wheel while going 70 miles per hour. In a desperate attempt to not die or kill anyone else, Rose turned the hazard lights on and grabbed the wheel. Knowing that the car would crash, she steered it away from other cars and into a group of trees. The car blasted through and tumbled down an embankment. When it finally came to a stop, it looked like a tin can someone had thrown to the ground and stepped on. Rose was still conscious, so she climbed out the window and went back to the highway for help. She caught the eye of a driver who pulled over. He dialed 911 and helped Rose get back to the crash site, where Terrell was trapped inside the car. The man stayed with the couple until first responders got to the scene. Rose later told the Washington Post that no one else even slowed down or even stopped to offer assistance. She and Terrell both broke their backs in the accident, and doctors realized that Terrell had a heart condition he didn't know about, which was what caused him to faint while driving. He received a pacemaker, and both he and Rose had to endure lengthy physical and emotional recoveries. More than 2 years later, they're still searching for the kind stranger who stayed by them when nobody else would. His name wasn't in the police report, and Rose's memories of him and his vehicle are vague. The couple launched a social media campaign to track him down in hopes of thanking him personally one day. Rose understands that he may not want to be found and said that if he's out there, she hopes he knows that his random act of compassion has inspired her to watch the road differently and look for opportunities to pay it forward to those in need. 5. Tusawe Munkhondia. Tusawe Munkhondia's life has been far from easy. She grew up in Malawi, one of the world's poorest countries, and became a single mother as a teenager at 16 years old. She was kicked out of her home then, but she persevered. She realized that she didn't want other people in situations like hers to struggle alone. Munkyonda founded a non-profit called Empowering Young Mothers, which started as a support group for young mums and was aimed at helping them overcome challenges and get the tools necessary to succeed. She also started a preschool. When she noticed that some students were struggling to pay fees or bring lunch to school, she took in a 5-year-old orphan whose mother had passed away. Understanding the complexity of her country's adoption process, Munkyonda contacted the government to let them know the boy was in her care. She began taking in more children, and at just 23 years old, she was a foster mother to over 30 kids between the ages of 6 months and 17 years. In addition to caring and providing for her ever-growing family, Munkyonda now runs 3 schools. While the arrangement is technically considered an orphanage, the selfless young woman sees the kids as her own. In a 2022 interview with Newsweek, she said, "I will be their mother and look after them for as long as they need me." Munkyonda told the magazine, "The children who come to her are often abandoned, orphaned, or living on the street with no adult supervision. To give them the sense of stability and safety they deserve and to discourage the stigma that comes with growing up as a ward of the state, she calls the orphanage a home and the kids there her family." She's also working on establishing a vocational school for women and more support groups for the elderly in her community. 4. Ethan Moore. In 2022, Brittany Moore and her 1.5-year-old son Ethan were playing with some bubbles outside their home in Georgia when something caught the little boy's eye. He ran over to a fence in the backyard, which is near a forest. When his mother asked him what he saw, he pointed and simply said, "Feet." Brittany asked Ethan to repeat himself and crouched down to see what it was. The toddler repeated the word feet, and Brittany soon spotted a pair of human toes. An elderly woman was laying on the ground, and she was alert but disoriented, in clear need of help. When first responders arrived, they realized the senior citizen was 82-year-old Nina Lipscomb, who suffers from early-onset Alzheimer's. She had been missing for several days after wandering off during a family gathering to search for her sister, who'd passed away several months before. Nina's daughter, Karen Lipscomb, told CBS 46 that the family had used every resource they could think of to find her mother, but even a coordinated search effort didn't work. After being evaluated and released from the hospital, Nina got a chance to meet the unlikely hero, who she and Karen wholeheartedly believe saved her life. They thanked little Ethan with a fresh bottle of bubbles, and the two families said that they feel permanently bonded by the strange encounter. 3. An unsuspecting fisherman. When 6 Brazilian sailors failed to come home after a 10-day ocean expedition in April 2022, their family started to fear the worst and reported them missing. Little did the crew's relatives know the men were alive, but they were stranded on a remote island off the country's northern coast. Their boat, the Bom Jesus, had run aground during a storm and later caught on fire, leaving it completely destroyed. Luckily, the sailors were able to reach Ilha de Flechas, or Arrow Island, but in many ways, their problems were just beginning. They didn't have enough drinking water to last very long, and they were completely isolated from civilization. The men survived for a few days by drinking rainwater and rationing the little food they had left. Nearly 2 weeks went by with no sign of rescue, and the prospect of death grew closer with each passing day. In a last-ditch effort to catch someone's attention, the crew put a handwritten message into a bottle, tossed it into the water, and hoped it would reach a populated shoreline or boat at sea. They also hoped someone would notice the bottle and read the note inside. A keen-eyed fisherman found the message, which had an urgent plea for help. He immediately alerted the Brazilian Navy, and after 13 days of not knowing whether they would survive, the castaways were taken to safety and reunited with their families. They received medical checkups and were dehydrated but in good health, which may not have been the case if rescue hadn't come when it did. That fisherman really saved the day by picking up a random bottle. 2. Owen Cash. U.S. Army Sergeant Owen Cash was serving in Iraq in 2005 when a roadside bomb struck his armored vehicle. He was severely burned in the blast, but pushed his own pain aside to pull other injured men from the flames while being shot at by enemy combatants. Some of the men didn't survive, but 6 soldiers' lives were saved thanks to Cash's bravery. The 35-year-old sergeant was hospitalized with burns on over 75% of his body. He was exposed to such extreme heat that his uniform started to melt while he fought to save the men. Cash died from his injuries just 3 weeks later. Several officers recommended that he receive the Medal of Honor, the U.S. military's most prestigious award. The Pentagon and Army carried out a lengthy investigation, which is customary when considering a candidate for such distinction. But it turned into a years-long battle that dragged on, while service members fought to get Owen recognized for his heroic act. It took so long that Congress had to introduce a new law specifically exempting Cash from the 5-year statute of limitations that Medal of Honor considerations are usually bound by. Finally, in 2020, 15 years after Cash gave his life in service of his country and fellow soldiers, Congress voted in favor of awarding him the Medal of Honor. His widow, Tamara, accepted the award from President Biden the next year in a ceremony commemorating Cash and 2 other soldiers. While it's unclear why it took so long for the government to recognize his sacrifice, a Washington Post piece pointed out that Cash was the first African-American serviceman to receive the distinction since the 9/11 terrorist attacks in 2001. 1. Joe Newby. British couple Joe and Christopher Newby became foster parents in 2004 when they brought a 3-month-old infant to their home in Yorkshire, England. At the time, Joe already had a biological son from a previous marriage. She and Christopher weren't sure if they would keep fostering, but they wanted to give it a try. In the 20 years since, they've cared for 92 foster kids who've stayed at their house for anywhere from a few days to a couple years. When 52-year-old Joe wasn't busy at home caring for the children who came and went over the years, she was coaching soccer. Inspired by her son, who's a soccer fanatic, she started 3 separate teams for disabled children and adults. Joe and Christopher continue to take in foster kids and have no plans to stop, and they certainly don't do it for the money like some may assume. Christopher works full-time as a civil servant while Joe is a full-time caregiver. After factoring in expenses, she barely makes any money at all, and she's perfectly fine with it since she believes it's what she's meant to do. In 2022, Christopher secretly nominated his wife as a candidate for the UK's Kindest Hero competition. She was chosen as the winner, and her lifetime of caring was officially commemorated with a 13-foot-tall statue of her on London's South Bank. Joe was in disbelief over the award when she spoke with the Mirror. She described herself as an average Joe and said that she assumed someone more deserving would win after Christopher told her it entered her in the contest. The devoted foster mum also said that she hopes her story helps people realize that small things can make a big difference. Thanks for watching. Would you help someone in need on the side of the street, call someone else to help them, or simply walk away? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.